Guts and Grit Podcast, a podcast where we discuss overcoming the odds, resiliency, and never giving up. Join us each week as hosts John Melson, Joy Vatrabek, and Mark Renahan discuss coming back from failure and never quitting. Guts and Grit, it's go time. Welcome to the Guts and Grit Podcast. I am your host, Mark Renahan. This is episode 7. Of course, to my left is my co-host, the lovely Joy Vatrabek.
Thank you, Mark.
And coming in over Zoom is, of course, Sergeant Melson coming from Fort Benning. I said it right this week, not Fort Bragg. I guess I keep making. We have yet another special guest. Last week, we had Rashid. He was formerly an Afghan translator who is now serving in the U.S. Army. We congratulated him on getting his officer.
Excellent.
Becoming a commission as an officer. Excuse me, I'm losing it. But Johnny, we got somebody else today that's just as interesting, and I thought maybe you could introduce us to him. I don't want to forget Noah, the engineer, who is always with us. But Johnny, why don't you introduce today's guest?
Well, Mark, today's guest, Noah Jameel. I came across him in my last unit that I served with. What a privilege and an honor to get to work with a guy like this, the background and his story. He, as a young child, he grew up in Iraq. His family went ahead and moved over here to the United States. And I got to meet him as a young man, as he is now. Like I said, he served in my unit I was deployed with, and continuing on with a great military career in the special operations community, utilizing what attributes he has, being able to be familiar with the Middle East. And he's over here serving our country, and he's a great American. And as you can see on the screen, that's Noah right there. That's Jameel.
Well,
hi, Jameel. Thank you, Jameel.
Welcome, Noah, and welcome to the Guts and Grit Podcast. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. This is a great opportunity. Like I said, I've never done anything like this before. And of course, John is a great friend and a great mentor and a great, NCO as well. And I love the man. So I appreciate everybody. Simon, John, thank you very much for inviting me over here.
Oh, well, we love him too, Noah. We love him too. So, Noah, we love to jump right in at the Guts and Grit show and get to our guests. And so maybe you could just start at the beginning and tell us and our listeners what it was like growing up in Iraq.
Yeah, well, my story begins. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Iraq, Baghdad. As a young kid at the time, I was, living under Saddam's regime. Went to school, and that's kind of when I started learning English, as we talked about earlier. It was an interesting time living in Iraq, because, I went through so many different, regimes and wars and stuff like that. And it's just like, you're mentally going through so many things at so many different times. Again, as a young kid, I lived semi-normal life. You really didn't talk much about it. You really couldn't say much. You pretty much live where you're told, and you live how you're told to live in a way. But again, just a normal kid, went to school, whatever. Really didn't, I didn't really talk a lot in school about Saddam and everything, stuff like that. Because, like I said, nobody talks about it. You just kind of go with the flow. But I guess really the most interesting time for me was, again, 2003. The war started and everything. I remember the first time, seeing Bradleys, in the streets of my neighborhood, that I was like, and I was kind of shell shocked, like, wow, what is this? It's crazy. But, if you growing up in Iraq, just about everybody in Iraq served in the military at some point. So I had a lot of family members that was, on the other side of the war, just fighting, but to me, though, I look at it like it was just like two armies fighting each other, whatever, and kind of life moves on. And then, after that, after 2003, and then all the new changes start happening, in your regime and your government. And to me, that's kind of like where everything really started, I started seeing the horrors of a lot of things, really, because in 2003, it was two conventional armies fighting each other, right? But after that, it became people fighting people. It wasn't really two big armies at that time. And I remember I think one of the first things that I encountered as a kid, and I will never, like, I remember this so vividly, I will never forget it. I was outside my grandparents' house, and there was like some Iraqi local guy just in a car, and parked his car, just like sitting in his car, and then another car pulls right next to him, and they just shoot him. They start shooting at him, and I was just like sitting there, and I kind of froze. I really didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? Again, I was like very young at that time. And I mean, I've seen the bullets go through out the windows, and that guy just like sat there, and I was like, man, this is crazy. This really just happened, right? And the car just took off, and that's it. And I think that was in like 2004, if I'm not mistaken. Like not shortly, like after like immediately after 2000, like early 2004. I remember it was kind of still cold at the time, and that's kind of like when reality kind of like sets in for me. Like, okay, so this is what the new normal is going to be. And I was like, and it's funny because, well, funny, it's really not funny, but nobody came and picked that guy up. You know what I mean? Not until, because everybody was scared to come in. I'm a Sunni Muslim, just kind of give a little bit of background. So I lived in a Sunni area, right? And a lot of the people, they were scared to come pick that guy up because, because like a lot of the new formed army wasn't really comfortable, to come in and just like kind of pick dead bodies or whatever, people just got killed. And that guy just sat in the car for pretty much half of the day until finally somebody came up and just picked him up. And that's kind of like what it all started for me. Like that was the first thing that I encountered, and that was the first thing that I saw. And that's a moment in the day that I will just never forget. And then moving on after that, yeah, that's when my dad actually started working as an interpreter in Iraq in 2004. And not only that was a very dangerous time for any local to work with the coalition forces of the U.S. forces, but it wasn't just my dad, it was also my cousin, and that's when we had the next kind of things that actually hit us home. At that point, it wasn't just watching people get killed or whatever. And now it came to us. So my cousin actually was the first one to get shot in our city, and because he was also an interpreter. He luckily for him, he got shot in the thigh, so he didn't die. He got transported to the hospital, and again that was a very like life-changing event in our family, and everything. And I think my dad took a break after that from working there because, again, he got scared, whatever, and rightfully so. But then my cousin continued to work as an interpreter, and honestly, man, there's a lot of things that I could just tell you, but just chaos just continued to happen. I mean, anything from I'm seeing people get blown up, it became the norm, right? So people get blown up. I've seen a lot of, whether it's Iraqi National Guard or it's American forces, just get hit all the time, and you just see like bodies and this and that, and as a kid, it's a lot to kind of take in. Also, one of the things that also kind of resonates in my memory that I will also never forget is I remember I was walking with my mother from our house, we were walking towards my grandparents' house, and I saw a convoy of Humvees, American soldiers, and the lead Humvee and the TC at the time, looked at me. And he waved at me and smiled, and I waved back at him and smiled, and and I was like, I thought that was really cool, and and there goes the convoy just goes in the city, and I'll say like maybe like 5-10 minutes later, and it is just hear and see a big explosion in the distance, and it was the lead Humvee where that guy just waved at me, and I still remember this, like, man, I always wonder like what happened to that guy, and to this day I still like I talk about it, like, man, I wonder if that guy made it. I wonder what happened to that guy. So that's the kind of stuff you kind of like, I went through as a kid, and it continued. It just never stopped. This is just like a fraction, because honestly, like if I tell you everything that I've encountered, we would be sitting here for hours. So there's just like fraction of things that you encounter. But again, so this things that I saw, and then another. Fast forward just a couple of years, until 2005, 2006, and that's when the sectarian war in between the Sunnis and the Shiites happened. Al Qaeda, everybody, I'm sure, John, like the Al Qaeda blew up a mosque that belonged to Shias, and they blamed it on somebody else just so they can start a sectarian war. And so that's really that was the next major event, which is because at that point, a Sunni cannot cross to a Shia's territory and vice versa. Because and a lot of problems came with that. So we couldn't travel anywhere, right? And because you were scared, because if you get caught, because they pretty much it was killing based on an ID. So they stop you with like the random checkpoints, right? And like military checkpoints. They stop you. You want to see if they look at your ID or whatever your name is, whether it's a Sunni name or a Shia name, you're gonna die. Whoever, depending on where you were, they will just kill you right there on the side of the road and just throw your body and then move on. It's like whatever. So that lasted for a very long time. And honestly, in my opinion, I think it's still kind of. I mean, it's not as bad as it was, but it kind of like it left a really bad stain on the Iraqi people, and just kind of continued for a long time. So that's when we had the next tragedy in the family, which like I said, everybody was scared to travel, and and it started affecting your neighbors because at the time we lived amongst everybody. Shia, Sunni, doesn't matter, because we had a lot of Christians, neighbors, a lot of Christians. I mean, but that wasn't a thing anymore, right? Either Sunni or Shia, and that's it. And unfortunately, I got to witness one of our older neighbors that got that lived in our city for a very long time. They came in one night, and they as in Al Qaeda, because unfortunately we lived among those people too. You know what I mean? And that's just the way it was. So you were just like on your P's and Q's all the time, just watching everything, just to make sure like you don't do the wrong thing. And for they came in, knocked on their door, like, hey man, you got 24 hours to leave this house. If we come back, you all guys gonna get killed, right? Wow. And we were and I think the people did leave the house. And there's that one time we were, in Iraq, we sleep on the top of the roofs in summertime because it's hot. So we kind of put mattresses on the roof and we sleep. And the next night, somebody just like kicked their front door in and just walked in, and they just started looting the house. And we were all sleeping on the roof at the time because our house were not right next to each other. And my uncle was so devastated. He was like, nobody gets up, nobody go look. This is not a good thing to watch. Just let it be. I mean, we can't do anything about it, and I don't want you to look at this kind of stuff. Again, and so on and so forth. Stories like that just honest never ends. I mean, again, like you were scared to even live in your own city because, I mean, hell, the problem is, I think what like drew a lot of young kids to be part of like insurgencies or extremist groups because the lack of social services at the time. Right, because you have no schools, and there wasn't really like any jobs and nothing. So people resorted to go to Al Qaeda and stuff like that. I mean, we're talking about like 14, 13, 15-year-old kids. I mean, you give somebody that age a pistol in a place that has no law and order, and you give him like, I don't know, maybe like $50 equivalent at the time, and and they feel on top of the world. So that created a lot of issues in families as well.
Jameel, not to interrupt you, but how old were you at that point, that time, 2005, I guess?
I was like, what? I mean, I'm 28 years old now, so math is not my best suit. So
mine neither, so I'm not going to even try. You were probably like 11, maybe 12?
Yeah, maybe
around there.
Yeah, something like that.
Before you keep going on, I don't mean to interrupt you too, but I have a million questions, and I have one for you. So first, I want to just stop and say thank you so much for sharing all this. I'm sure bringing back some of these memories is not the most pleasant, but John and I always like to discuss it. Sometimes talking about stuff helps a little bit. But my question is this. So first, your English is unbelievable. We discussed this offline, and you started early. But when you were a kid, for people that are watching, and like a lot of listeners don't know much about Iraq at all. I mean, they know it from what the movies they see, the news headlines, and they just basically think war when they see it. But when you were a kid, did you have any normal, when I say normalcy, did you have, buddies and you played soccer or stuff like that, like all kids across the world do?
Yeah. So before I answer this question, are you asking about pre-2003 or post-2003?
Pre-2003. Okay.
Man, I mean, truth be told, I had a normal life as a kid, in pre-2003. I went to school, my family, were like normal working people, and I had a lot of friends. I enjoy basketball more than soccer, to be honest, even though soccer is the biggest thing in the Middle East, but really wasn't my thing. I also and I liked boxing as well. That was also a thing that I enjoyed a lot. So yeah, I had a normal life, because I remember my parents would take me to the kindergarten and of course elementary later on, and I had a lot of friends, just like in normal school hours, and I was really good. I was like a straight A student. I was a really good student.
John and I were also.
Yeah,
I can tell by your English.
yeah. So I had a normal life as a kid. Like I said, things didn't really change for me and become like, wow, what is it? What is happening? Not until 2003, and even at the beginning of 2003, I didn't really see a lot of the war because everything at the beginning was happening out on the outside of the city until everything came into the city, which is Baghdad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, I had a lot of uncles and everything that were in the army, Republican Guard, whatever officers. So, I know about the war from their stories and from them, about everything that happened. But I guess as the war started getting closer to the city, that's when I started seeing, okay, planes in the air, rockets, missiles. And actually it to me, it was kind of cool at the time. It was I think it was Tomahawk missile, the one they fly low and they just kind of go right above buildings. And I saw that with my own eye, just flying above a building, going so like, and I was like, I looked at it like, wow, that's crazy. You know what I mean? And like that's awesome. Yeah.
As a young kid, if you saw a Tomahawk, I'm sure any young kid would be like, "Oh, look at that thing!"
I remember like it was a big black missile, and it's like just flying over the house. Like, wow, this is crazy. And that's at the time when he started. Actually, speaking of it, that was the first time that I actually saw insurgents from Jordan and Syria in Baghdad. That was the very first time because I didn't see any like when the war came into the city, there wasn't any regular army anymore. I didn't see any of those. All those guys were on the outskirts. But then you start seeing, insurgents from other countries, fighting and whatnot. So yeah, so that's when things started to change for me. Everything before that, I was a normal kid, had a normal life, just go to carnivals, go to pools, go to the river, just go where, the city that I lived in had a big mosque over there. And right outside there was like, all the grilled food and the restaurants and the kebabs. So again, so I had a normal life and we did all these things, so yeah, and things didn't really change for me up until when the war actually came into the city. So
Okay.
Hey, so Noah and Mark, let me enjoy. I can share this with you, but Mark will know exactly what I'm going to say. So I was in Iraq 05 06.
Yeah.
And where you're talking about where Noah's mentioning, you guys, where the different sects not sex, but sects.
I know what you're talking about.
I know where you're going with this, John, but go ahead.
Right, so it was Shia and Muslim, Shia and Sunni. There was like the old school Boston. There was segregation, and to cross over, Mark, that was a huge no-no. And you mentioned how Al Qaeda started getting a bigger footprint in Baghdad. During my time there, 05 06, we had a big problem with the Mahdi militia.
Yep.
Right. So the Mahdi would cause a lot of problems, and it ended up being who they were aligned with. Right. So a lot of the pilgrims would try and go down to Saudi Arabia, and they would get attacked on the trek. And we ended up dealing with a lot of that where I was just southwest, probably about 60, 65 miles southwest of Baghdad. I was in Iskandariya, the big power plant.
Yep.
So I was there at Iskan and Musaid. But what I wanted to reiterate to Mark and get him to envision, when he's talking about the food cooking out on the street and the shops are busy, Mark, picture Lansdowne Street on the backside of the Green Monster, Lansdowne Street, and all the sausage shops are out there and everything's out there for the Sox game. That's what like driving in some sections of downtown Baghdad were. It was hustling. People were out making money. The population was out. And as well as the further you went up closer to Baghdad into the city, it was more westernized. I'm not going to say like it was more modernized. That's what I'll say. It was more.
You two say that Iraq is way more modernized than Afghanistan?
Yes.
So,
in the built-up city area, definitely yes. But even Jameel will confirm, as you move further away from the city, it becomes a more rough of a lifestyle.
From my studies, John, in international relations, I understand that Iraq actually was more modernized previous to Saddam, maybe in the 70s. Is that correct?
Yes.
Noah, good.
Yeah, correct. But so actually, I'm gonna take you back to the 50s. So my, during like when Iraq was not a republic for a little bit, it was a kingdom. So my grandfather, actually, on my dad's side, was a chancellor for Turkey, and he worked for the king of Iraq at the time.
Really?
So a lot of what I know about Iraq, it's 70s and all the way back to the 50s, it was very modernized, and a lot of Westerners came into Iraq, like in the 70s and whatnot. Up, of course, not until the 1980 war started, but prior to that, there were a lot of people that come in Iraq, and Iraq is in a good spot at the time, but a lot of people say ever since they overthrew the king at the time, and and then one coup after another, and the Iraq just kind of kept going, like a snowball effect, and it just kept rolling, and it just kind of like it got really bad after that. But yes, the 70s and the 50s, and from the 50s all the way to the 70s, Iraq was in a pretty good position.
So no, to go back to you now, we're around 2009. When did you first come to the U.S. and was it? I'm assuming you came and stayed for good. Like you haven't been back and forth, obviously, correct?
Correct. Yes. So when my dad worked as an interpreter up until 2011, there was an SIV program for interpreters. I think it became a thing in 2008, which if you work for X amount of years for the U.S. Army or the Marines, whatever the case might be, you will be eligible to apply for the special immigration visa program. And that's what we did. That's what my dad did. And that's how pretty much everybody else in my cousin and pretty much everybody else in the family that worked as an interpreter at some point in time, they all came to the U.S. that way. So I applied for that. But that's a long waiting process. I mean, and you might not even get approved. So, we applied for it. And then fast forward, a couple of years later, I think they approved it and said, hey, and then like a couple of months later, at that point, we were just waiting on a plane to get ticketed, by the government. The government is in the U.S. government, and then they would fly us over to the States. That's how it's, and that happened in 2012. That's when I stepped foot in the United States.
Wow.
How old were you then, Jameel?
I was 18.
18.
I was 18 at that point.
Where is the first place in the U.S. you arrived to?
I was actually in New York.
So what was your impression when you first saw the Big Apple?
I think wow is an understatement, to be honest with you. Yeah, it was one of those moments of like, I wanted to go and touch and see and look at everything, right? And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, wow, there's like and of course, coming from Iraq, didn't have all the things that we have in the U.S. now. So to me, I started with the little things. The little things were like that wowed me a lot. For example, it was a freaking coffee shop like inside the airport. You know what I mean? Like that was like I'm gonna you know what I mean? Like I was like, I'm gonna go get some coffee because this is so cool. You know what I mean? And it was inside the airport. Like it was that was the first selling. So I was honestly I was wowed lots. I didn't even know where to start at that point, what to look. I'm like, this is amazing. I just kept staring at everything at that point.
Well, just before we go any further, I love New York. John and Joy all love New York. But we do want to make sure you're aware that the New York Yankees is an evil organization, an enemy of all that is good and well in the world. So when you get here, all America is good except for the Yankees. You should never, ever get too close to them. Can't be trusted as a baseball team. Anyway.
So I've heard.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let me ask you another question, Jameel. When did you, excuse me, Noah's last name is Jameel, and that's what John calls him. But when did you first meet Sergeant Melson, and what was your first impression, or when did you first see him? I'd like to hear that one. I'm sure everyone else would, too.
We met in Fort Bliss, Texas in 2018. That's when because I volunteered for that deployment that John was on, because I wanted to deploy like that, I wanted to deploy that because I like deployments. And that's I think I don't remember, somebody introduced me to John at the time. This is John, first round Melson and everything, and is this PG on
You can try to keep it PG, but yeah. So you can use a bleep maybe or expletive. It would be great.
Maybe like, man, that's a big motherfucker.
Well, like I always tell people, John is what you want your soldier to look like. He's 100%. If Hollywood is watching and you're looking for an actor to play a commando, John's the guy you want to hire.
That's when I first met him, and I think it it was because there was like I think it was like an aerosol school that was supposed to happen in Fort Bliss. I don't even know if it happened actually or not, but there was, and I think somebody recommended that I go, and I think John was leading that at the time, and that's how I first met John. I think John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you knew like who I was, and you knew like a little bit of me. So I think we talked a little bit of Arabic, whatever Arabic a little bit. You did talk to me in some Arabic words in here and there. And of course, at that time, John became a lot more cooler to me. Like, well, heck, this guy even knows my language. This is awesome. But ever since then, my love for John just kept growing and growing. And the more I saw of John, I like, man, I always looked up for John, and I continue to look up for him. To him, excuse me, because he's such a great mentor and a soldier, and he just motivates the heck out of you, even if you're not motivated. So, love John to death.
Excellent. Now, Johnny, what? Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was going to say, so Noah, for our listeners, you met John because you joined the Army after you came to the States?
Yes, correct. I joined the Army in 2016.
Okay.
So you came to the United States from Iraq. You witnessed, war and all that. And one of the first things you decided to do is to serve our country upon getting here.
That's awesome.
So that was my ultimate goal. I got to say, I've jumped from jobs to jobs, plenty of jobs here and there. Coming into the States as, starting fresh, you had a working, permit, didn't really have anything at the time. I mean, the best you can do is you can get is like a factory for $8, or $7.50 or whatever. That's what I did for a little bit, I slowly improved, but I knew what I wanted to be even when I was little. But I knew that good things come with time and it needs a lot of patience. And so I continued to work, these little jobs here and there, moved up a little bit. And then, long story short, I landed a job actually in real estate, and I was a manager for a while. And I was, it was a good job and I loved it. I was like, okay, I'm doing good. But then I just wasn't really happy. I just wasn't happy. And even though, again, they paid for an apartment, like the company paid for it, it was a good job, and I was, making decent money, everything but I just wasn't happy because I'm like, man, I still need to fulfill my dream to jump out of airplanes. And that's really what and that's what I was thinking about. And I was like, so, I started having problems with the job, whatever. And I'm like, you know what, maybe this is my calling to quit this job and I will join the Army. And I quit my job. And I went to the recruiter's office the next day. And I said, hey, I want to join the Army and I want to go jump out of airplanes. And again, at the time, I had no idea. I knew nothing about the Army. I knew, I didn't know, all the jobs the Army has, nothing. I just wanted to join in and just jump out of airplanes and whatnot. So I go in and, and it's okay, well, you need, this, that. The only education that I had is high school from Iraq, and because I moved after that. Well, okay, so I gave him that, and then come back later, and the recruiter said, man, they're not going to recognize this diploma that you have, so you can't join unless you go get your GED. And he's like, that is the only way that you can get into the Army. And I said, okay, fine, I'll come back in a month. And I didn't stop there. I literally went in at a month, maybe less than a month. I just went into the nearest community college, and I said, I want to test out the GED, test. I didn't even study. I just went and took the test, and I went in and I passed the test, and I got my GED, and I went back to the recruiter. I was like, here you go, and he was like, man, that was quick. I was like, I told you, I'll be back in a month or less. So I went back and there and again, even then I still had some issue. Like, man, we can't get you an airborne slot. Like, nope, I will not join the military unless I have it on my contract that I will be going to airborne school. Finally after pulling some strings here and there, I got that, and I finally went into to joining the Army in 2016, and yeah, it's been the Army has been the best thing that happened to me since I've moved here. 100%. Honestly, if not in my life. I mean, the Army has been good to me. The Army has been good, and I just love it. All the opportunities, the people that I've met, the people that you meet in the military. Sometimes, again, every job has, comes with problems, but man, sometimes, I just forget about it because all the good things that come from. Again, I met John in the military, right? I mean, that's just one of the people that I met.
Well, that's not always a good thing.
Well, for some people, and maybe not, John, but to me, I'm glad I met you. So the Army has been good to me. It's been the best thing that happened, and I just love it. You know what I mean? So, that's really, and fast forward 6 years later, here I am still in the Army. So and 2 deployments in, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it.
Noah, have you ever met a fellow Iraqi who was serving in the U.S. Army?
Actually, I did very recently in Africa. It was a Navy guy that came down from Germany to do some logistic stuff and whatnot, and it's funny, I was at the jock and he just walked in and I'm just looking at this guy, looking at his last name, and his last name is Jabouri. That's an Iraqi name. And I'm like, but this guy is look Hispanic or is he Iraqi? I don't know. Like, I don't understand. Like, there's no way he's Iraqi. What is he doing here anyway? So like, no. And then we talking like, yeah, what do you do here? Like, I told him, some of the jobs that I do, like, well, I also translate things and whatnot. And they're like, translate, like, what language do you speak? I said, I speak Arabic. And he said, Arabic? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, well, I speak Arabic too. And he started talking. I was like, where are you from? He was like, I'm from Iraq. He was, I think he was from Northern Iraq, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think he was. But yeah, that was, I think, the only Iraqi that I've met in my, so far in my military career. Great guy, really, he was a really nice guy. But I made the joke to him one day, and I said, because I asked him, like, hey man, so when did you move to the States? Man, I've been in the States since the 70s. I was like, oh, so you're the privileged Iraqi. The one that got to lead before all the stuff started happening. But anyway, great guy. But yeah, that was the only Iraqi. I've met a lot of other Arabs in the military. Also, like I met the guy from Lebanon, a great guy as well. But Iraqis really just not as often, as I thought I would. But
and Noah, do you ever had any desire to be an interpreter, or have you done any interpreting for the U.S. military?
So I've done it on both deployments. My last deployment and this one. So my last deployment, we went to Syria for a little bit and then Kuwait and all that. So it's kind of one of those things that you don't really. It's not one of those like hey, do you want to do this? You're going to do this kind of thing. Especially where like, and this is not a bragging moment, but especially when you're the only one in the unit that has that capability. You're gonna get to you're gonna get voluntold to go translate and do some things. You know what I mean? So it's really not a choice, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. This is not me complaining. I love it. I love that I have the ability to enhance the unit's capability or the team, whatever. I love to see that, and I'm all for it. And John knows that as well. I love to be able to have the ability to give that capability, enhance the team, to make it more successful. So yeah, I have no problem with it at all. Whether it's a direct position or an indirect, I'm still gonna do it anyway.
You still get to jump out of airplanes?
I do. I haven't in a minute because like I said, I was on a deployment and I just got back. Hopefully sometime this fall. We'll be back jumping again because it's been a while, and I sure do love jumping.
Well, we're actually located here in Florida in a place called Sebastian, and they have a very huge skydive facility. It's one of the greatest in the country. The people come from all over the world, so you're always welcome to come down. We'll take you. I'm not going, but John, I don't jump out of planes. Gravity. It's boom, down I go.
I fly planes, not jump out of planes.
Yeah, no, I do crocodiles. I don't do jumping out of planes. That's John. Do you jump out of planes?
Not currently, but I was airborne. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
So airborne, ranger, and sapper, correct?
Yes.
Is there anything else you're missing?
Probably a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Mother of God. Anyway, so I just want to say, Noah, it's amazing that you come over here, and again, I want to thank you so much. But you immediately serve our country as when you first get here. I know a lot of people don't, I guess, appreciate. I don't know what the word is, but you seem to have taken to America quite well. And as a fellow American, I'm very happy to have you on board with us now. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
I agree as well. And your determination to get in there.
The United States gave me a new life, gave me a new opportunity that I did not have, and almost just did not have. So I'm forever grateful. You know what I mean? And I will, and even though sometimes, living in the States, you sometimes get complacent. I joke a lot, and I catch myself and I talk to myself mentally like, I have nothing to complain about here. You know what I mean? I because I knew where I came from and I knew all these things. So, I'm forever grateful. And like I said, man, like just the story of us even getting here. Again, I lost my brother in the process of trying to move to the United States, my baby brother. Right. So, and that was that was really the turning point of our lives. And some of my family, like my mother, she was never the same after that.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry.
So just coming here after all of that, it's incredible, and I'm forever grateful. Like I said, we lost a lot of people in the process, just trying to make it out here. So again, I have nothing to complain about, and if there's any lesson that Iraq taught me, just living there for 18 years, was, it's adaptability, man. You know what I mean? To me, because things just kept changing all the time. And if you don't adapt to what's going on and just kind of, you're getting left behind, you're going to get lost. You know what I mean? So you just keep, again, just life moves on, life continues. You just got to keep going. You know what I mean?
John and I we talk offline a lot about how when I talk to somebody like you and what you went through growing up, my complaints, like average, seem like, all right, shut your mouth. Everything is fine. You're overreacting on stuff. So it's amazing. I mean, and some might say, John, that Noah used guts and grit to make it through his time in Iraq to get over here. That's what we like to throw into every show. So, guys, we're getting a little bit towards the end, but Johnny, I don't know if you wanted to end us with anything. One last question. Would you two ever serve together now? Are you in different units, or how would that work?
We're in different units.
I'll give my two cents. And is the opportunity a reality that we could serve together? Yes. Okay. What is the likelihood? Not sure. It would all depend on whether or not if we were both available to volunteer on the same type of operational deployment.
Gotcha.
Or if, say, like I'm working here at Fort Benning and Noah wants to put in for a job to come up here to be an instructor, teaching Pathfinder, Aerosol, and he wants to go to Ranger School. Well, I'll get my hands on him up here and we can train and hang out and do soldier stuff up here. So there is the opportunity in reality. But as of right now, we're in two separate units. You got anything, Jameel?
No, yeah. I mean, just to kind of reiterate what John said. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's impossible for me and John to be in the same place again. And honestly, like I said, I mean, if I would want to go out of my way to volunteer to go somewhere else, and it would probably be someone like John. You know what I mean? I would 100% serve under him, without a doubt. But currently in different units. Yeah, I moved out of the conventional realm and I went to the special operations community. I've been in there since 2019. So a couple of years. And this is my first deployment with them, and I like it so far. So I'm going to continue that and just kind of see, where the Army, when my career takes me after that. And who knows? Again, the Army is a small world, and you meet a lot of people after so many years. Like, man, I remember you from this and this and that. So yeah.
Well,
this is just a little sidebar. Sorry to interrupt you, but Mark already knows. But for the both of you, so my husband did 2 tours in Iraq. 2003, the first surge. And I think, John, he was there when you were there in 2005.
Okay.
He was a Marine, though.
Yes, he's a Marine. He was a Marine, so he didn't serve with you, but or maybe.
Oh, actually, yeah, you guys all work together, John, when you're over there, don't you?
Well, on the 2005 deployment, I was with the Mississippi Army National Guard, the same unit Noah and myself were served in very recently. I was with the 155 BCT out of Mississippi Army National Guard, and they were part of 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force. So we were partnered up with the Marines for our tour in Iraq.
Okay, so you could have been when the town you mentioned earlier. He mentions that as well.
Iskandariyah or Musaib?
Yes, Iskandariyah.
Yes. So the Marines had occupied Iskandariyah prior to us, and we came in, and they pushed up towards Ramadi once we came in.
Okay, well, that's interesting. He may have well have been around that time.
Excellent. Well,
I just want to say something because, Mark, I know in our early episodes I had said, and probably unknowing, maybe we did have this small talk, Noah, that I spent several years after I got out of the Marine Corps living with a Lebanese family, the Malou family in Boston. And they kept telling me my name in Arabic was Yahmag.
What was it again, John?
That is not true.
Something tells me that means something that I don't want to know. So I am not going to push that any further. But I want to thank you so much. Today we had Noah Jameel. Noah is now in the U.S. Army. He grew up in Iraq, and he is now a proud American. And Noah, we can't, thank you for coming on here and telling your story. I know it's obviously not a huge I'm sure it's not something you want to constantly relive, but I'm sure talking about it, I hope, helped you a ton. We can't appreciate your service to our country and just what a good guy you are.
Yes, no,
I can't thank you enough. For those of you watching, check us out on YouTube and subscribe. We're on Facebook and Podbean and all of your podcasting apps, wherever you want to do it. Spotify, Pandora, Alexa. I don't know what I'm forgetting, but we're on all of those. Once again, we are the Guts and Grit podcast, and today was Noah Jameel. Noah, again, thanks so much. Johnny, you want to take us out with our saying?
Sure will. So, Noah, I know you know this about me. You know I like to train, right? I'm at the gym constantly trying to stay strong, right?
I'm trying to catch up with you, John.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay so I can keep beating you guys. Right? So the thing I say it all the time, Noah, you might have heard me when I was the company first sergeant over at Alf Company, is the backing of why we do any of the training we do. What our motivation is. Our motivation is train to be hard to kill.
Correct.
They're going to come and try and take your life, make them work for it.
Correct.
All right, boys. Training to be hard to kill. We'll see you all next week. Thank you, Noah. Thank you, John, as always. Later, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Guts and Grit. Like, subscribe, comment, share.